Hey everyone, my name is James and welcome back to ChippyGaming. So today I'm here to talk all about the latest Terraria State of the Game post for February 2020. If you've never seen one of these before, essentially, Relogic get a blog post each and every month and they cram it with a little bit of news about every single version of Terraria that they currently work on. So this usually includes PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, mobile devices, and then finally Terraria 1.4 on the PC. However, this month we never really got a 1.4 spoiler, and this is why I skipped over the state of the game last month, but we got some great clarification from Senex about why we never got that spoiler, and I do want to spend a little bit of time at the end talking about it. But that doesn't mean we don't have any PC news. They recently did a Q&A with Relogic and Line4's brought up some very interesting stuff, and also I do want to speak about that at the end. So with that out of the way, let's jump into our first bit of Terraria news. So for the console versions, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, we just found out that the 1.3.5 update will be heading to both of those systems very shortly. It recently just passed all of the internal reviews, and it will soon be handed over to Microsoft and Sony so that Microsoft and Sony can do their review, their processing, and then finally release the update to all of you. Now we know how it goes, Microsoft and Sony can work at very different paces, so we might see an update come out on the same day for both systems, or we could see a staggered launch for the update like we've seen in the past. This is great, I can't wait for console players to have this update, mainly because you'll have UI sliders, and this means if you're sat further back from your television, you'll be able to make all of the menus much larger. So if you're somebody who wears glasses like me, you're going to have a much better time playing Terraria. The only thing I actually miss about the older versions of console Terraria was those giant menus, but now that we have UI sliders, I feel like it's going to be the ultimate experience for console players, and that's great. Unfortunately, things are not looking as good for the Switch version of Terraria. They do have a version of 1.3.5 running on the system. However, they did say that they're having some kind of stability issue, a performance issue, and that is to be expected. It's a much weaker system. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to fix all of those stability issues before then handing the update to Nintendo. I feel like as a Nintendo fan, and also knowing Switch owners, this is the best route possible, rather than going for the update where it launches a little buggier than it should be and then you fix it over time. I feel like Switch owners really want the perfect update straight out of the gate. I know some console fans don't really care too much about that, and I do get that mentality. You just want to play it and you'll work around the bugs yourself, but stability is a very big thing. I'm personally a massive advocate for the Switch edition. I feel like it's the best version other than the PC edition of Terraria, and I can't wait to get my hands on 1.3.5. The day it comes out, I'm just going to play the whole game in one sitting, and it's going to be glorious. So I'm grateful to see that we actually got some screenshots of the Old One's army running on the Switch, but we'll just have to wait for those stability issues to be fixed. Now, over to mobile. So we did skip over the state of the game last month, and what we ended up seeing was an Xbox One controller working with mobile Terraria. Well, we actually saw today the other half of the update, which is customization. This update is called Controller and Customization. So what we got to see was a bunch of screenshots of the player deciding exactly where they want all of their controls, and this is just great for so many people. Everybody's phone is different, everybody's hands are different, and soon you'll be able to just tweak Terraria to match the needs that you want. This might be good for people with accessibility issues or maybe some forms of disabilities. For example, people suffering with like mild arthritis. You may not want to use your thumb at certain angles, for example, and soon you'll be able to shift that so that it might be in a more comfortable position. That's just me theorizing. It would be great if that could help some people, but you never know. More customization is always a good thing. Apparently, after this update comes out, they're then going to move over to content, so I can imagine them releasing 1.3.5 pretty quickly. This studio moved really quick, and I really like what they've done with mobile Terraria. So finally, we're going to be talking about the PC edition of Terraria. Now, after this little segment, we're going to go into the Relogic Q&A, which is actually where you'll find the bulk of the information about PC in today's video. But to talk about this little bit really quickly, there was a simple line in the State of the Game post that was kind of there. It's a little bit of filler, a little bit of fluff, you know, something vague, something mysterious about 1.4, but nothing really tangible that you could theorize on. Now, Senex actually gave me some really good clarification on Twitter, and I'm really glad she did, because it's that transparency from Relogic that I think we all love to see. Senex essentially said, I don't want to show any spoilers for a while. The stuff that is left to spoil is a big deal, and I don't want to show it early. Now, you may think because I've been making these news videos for all these years that you probably think I want a new spoiler every week or at least every month. But the truth is, if we're now reaching a point where we've seen too much and they want to pull back and make it a little less known, I think it's a really good thing. Ultimately, and even when working on the trailer, we all want to go into Terraria 1.4 knowing as little as possible, but also having seen enough to help us get through that long wait before we get to play it. Much like every other game, you want spoilers on the journey, but towards the end, maybe you should pull back just a little bit. I think this is good stuff. I'm really glad that Senex came out and said this. I love the transparency, and the clarification was on point. Alright, so as promised, let's do a little bit of talk about this Q&A with Relogic. It was a pretty big Q&A featuring Loki and Line4s. So for this segment, I'm really going to be focusing on the responses from Line4s. So for a little bit of background information about this person, they work in the QA department at Relogic. So he started out as a forum member, and then a moderator, and then a beta tester, and worked his way up to be a full-time employee at Relogic, which I'm sure all of you will agree is a pretty great dream job. Now, Line4's role at Relogic is to look at Terraria in a much different way than some of the perspectives that we usually get. Senex, of course, oversees the project in many ways, and that's usually who we're talking about. So it's really nice to have this perspective from somebody else that's working at Relogic that looks at it all a little bit differently. Now, there's a little scrap of information to take from every single one of these answers. I'm going to try and leave it up to you guys to really pull that yourself, but the ones I've picked out, I do feel like really show a narrative. So running through them very quick, because I picked out a lot of his responses. I found them all very fascinating, genuinely. Somebody asked, how do you guys and the rest of Relogic feel about Journey's End? He responded, it's coming together, but definitely has a lot of stuff we still want to add before it's ready. Somebody asked, will Gollum be buffed? He responded, he's been buffed somewhat an expert and is a little bit harder to cheese. What I imagine from this is that they've probably removed the little trick where you can move the altar when spawning Gollum. Maybe that, maybe it wants you to not fly as much, but buffed an expert is strange. I assume that they would have buffed it in both modes for Terraria, because I've always found Gollum to just be so weak compared to Plantera, but we'll see when the update comes out. Somebody asked, at what magnitude do you feel like Team Mod Loader mods will be affected? He responded, every update breaks mods, and this is a pretty big update. Hopefully we can communicate some of the changes ahead of time to help the mod teams prepare in advance a little, but Uri would be the best person for that. That's very interesting. We've never really heard of Relogic approaching mod teams before. That could be pretty good. Somebody asked, how do you feel about 1.4 being the last update? He responded, it's sad to see it happen because there is so much more I'd want to add, but I can see the code limitations / foundational issues that can't be fixed and are making it hard to add more content. It needs to end, unfortunately. This is a sentiment I haven't really seen tossed around since the development of Terraria 1.3. This is something that Relogic would often say, because 1.3 was originally going to be the final update for Terraria, and as many of you know, we got some small updates afterwards, but they were always stretching what they could do based on those foundational issues. So the best possible future, and I don't think Relogic will ever do this, is they do decide to rebuild Terraria from scratch. They call it an enhanced edition, they resell it, but they also add another giant patch to it. And then we can have a Terraria that can still have content for another 10 years. That's what I personally would love to see. But I do feel like that's the problem, thinking about it now with Terraria Otherworld, is that it was always trying to just be Terraria rebuilt from scratch, but not as good as Terraria, because it didn't have as much as Terraria. Huh, interesting. That's never really put those dots together before, and here I am, doing it live. Thanks, Lineforce. Somebody asked, will certain weapons be nerfed? He responded, a lot of stuff is being given a balance review. I err on the side of buffs rather than nerfs when I can, but sometimes nerfs are necessary. I didn't actually know that that was something that Relogic did, that they tried to buff stuff rather than nerf stuff. That's pretty interesting, and I don't feel like a lot of people know that. Somebody asked, can we combine lava waders and frostbark boots in Terraria 1.4? Line4's responded, ever since 1.2, I remember seeing Red say that he didn't want to combine them, and he's been consistent on that. So it sounds like a no. Well, alright. I would like to see it too. Somebody asked, will you make grappling mechanics like the one that was going to be in Terraria Otherworld? Line4's responded, probably not possible to implement, not in a good way at least. Terraria Otherworld was built that way from the ground up. Somebody asked, a similar feature as life fruits but with mana. Line4's responded, I've been bringing up an idea like that for years. No traction so far though. Somebody asked, do you feel the game would be complete in some way after 1.4? If not, what's missing? Line4's responded, the thing about Terraria is that the game has so many areas that can be expanded, but there's just not enough time to devote the love to them so that we could. So I think that's where we try to polish it up and leave as many options as possible for modders to experiment with. Because ultimately, we have to draw the line somewhere. I think Journey's End will be a good closing note on the game. So with that, I think I'm going to wrap up the video there, guys. That probably went on a little too long, but I did find all of Lineforce's responses to be interesting and definitely worth bringing up to get his perspective on Journey's End was something we hadn't seen before, and I really enjoyed that Q&A. Right, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. If you made it to the end, thank you. Give the video a big fat thumbs up, and if you are new around here, maybe consider clicking the subscribe button. By subscribing to ChippyGaming, you're in the one-stop place for all your Terraria needs. I am working on some bigger videos at the minute, that's why I've been a lot slower. I actually really want to talk about a really giant Stardew Valley mod that I've been looking at as well, so maybe expect a video for that in the upcoming weeks. Right, thank you guys for watching, hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace!